Do you know what it's like to hide who you really are? This week's guest has struggled with exactly that, and they're now talking to schools and corporate companies about the power of being unapologetically you. Let's get right into Aiden's story. Aiden, tell us a little bit about yourself in short, so the audience who don't know you can kind of find out who you are, what it is that you do.
Okay, so I'm Aiden. I'm a public speaker. I'm a marketer. I am transgender, and that's kind of I've had like my personal experience. So I came out when I was 18. I'm now 28. Sort of the growth I experienced in that time. It's something that I like to talk about, not only in sort of schools, with young people and trying to get across the power of kind of being yourself, but in like corporate settings and stuff as well. So yeah, that's kind of who I am, what I do.
Amazing. You did that in short. You did that really well as well.
Sure,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's it's who I am, it's what I do.
impressive. You'd think you were a content writer or
Oh,
something.
stop it.
So you spoke about being transgender. Now, in terms of coming out, what was it like then? Because you talked about briefly about being 18 and being,
Yeah.
but where did it start?
Where did it start? So I remember being 13 and having a little bit of a panic to myself for like a good couple of months. Sort of feeling what I now know to be kind of gender dysphoria. Feeling very panicked about kind of my sense of identity, about who I was. That's when a lot of things like body image issues started, which again I didn't really quite connect the dots. From there I was like, I'm just not going to deal with this, I don't think. And from then until I was about 17, I put a pin in it, had a pretty not great time as a result. And then when I was 17, I was like, there's something going on with the gender here. There's
Yeah.
something I've got to do.
Did you feel like you needed to approach it and you need to sort this out?
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't right. There was something just off about who I was and how I was living my life. And I mean, you know this, but I was at an all girls school. You know what I mean? I felt completely just like I'm out at sea all the
So
time.
day to day, when you were at an old girls' school,
Yeah.
how did you feel being around these girls? When you had, for example, in the changing room, let's say, and you were to do PE,
Yeah.
how did it feel for you?
It felt again, it came down to having these body image issues that at the time just felt like I'm a teenager, I'm having body image issues, but the particular ones I was having about like certain parts of my body and where I wanted what I didn't want to be there, or the certain shape of like my hips and stuff. It's stuff I look back on now and I realize that not only was I going through those body changes, but they were the wrong ones. And so being in front of a load of people and having this body that wasn't quite right, it just, again, everything felt a bit surreal.
Yeah, so you felt like it just wasn't you, and
Yeah.
credit to you for getting through that. But the bit I want to ask you about is your parents, your family.
Yeah.
How did you feel about telling them? And then secondly, how did they react?
So I was pretty scared to tell him. Now like it's all got a happy ending, but I've got to say like I was kind of right to be scared. So I've got my parents and I've got my three siblings, and I came out to them all kind of one to one. And I don't think there was really a single hugely positive experience there. It wasn't a great time. There was, looking back now, a lot of fear, I think, and a bit of anger from them. A lot of not understanding where I was coming from or where it had come from. I'd kept myself to myself a lot, so they didn't understand the journey that I'd been on and the questions I'd been asking myself.
Yeah. Was there a feeling of disappointment that maybe they didn't react in a positive way?
Um, yeah, a bit, but also it was kind of expected. So coming out's not easy. It gets a lot easier, but it never gets easy because you never know how a person's going to react. You never know sort of what knowledge they have, or how they feel about trans people, because some people really aren't a big fan. The good news is though that kind of over time, so for maybe a year or so, it was pretty rough. Like I was still in the last year of that girls' school. I didn't really like being at home a lot because I didn't feel great in myself, and I didn't feel like I was comfortable. I'd asked for certain names and pronouns, it wasn't getting used.
And how do your parents react now, and how are your siblings with you now? What would you say there's a support now network, or how do you feel now?
I'm so close to my family now. I'm just me. I'm just Aiden. They don't blink. It's over time kind of seeing me thrive in areas where I think they thought I was setting myself up to fail, that they started to realize, oh, he's not just doing this on a whim. He's doing this because that's actually who he is.
Yeah.
I can understand, a bit of confusion. I'm not the most like macho person, and I wasn't before I transitioned.
Neither am I.
Yeah. Like there's so many different ways to be a man and so many different ways to be masculine. And I think accepting transness is kind of accepting that as well. So they've kind of learned over time, and I couldn't have a more supportive family at this point, really.
No, I love that. And like you said, there's many different ways to be a man, and there's
Yeah.
no one right way, and that's the key message, I think, for the young people, is to be who you are.
Oh yeah.
Whoever you feel you should be, that's who you need to be. And
Yeah.
and I love that. Now, going through the transition, did you go through any bullying? Was there any mental health struggles? How was that?
So bullying, very lucky. So school, not great, but like didn't have any bullies. The people who weren't particularly happy about it or didn't really get it, we just stayed away from each other. It was absolutely fine. The bullying, again, not something that I labeled it as them, but the bullying came from me. I was my own worst bully. I put myself through it for many, many years throughout my teenage years. And I made my life a lot harder for myself, to be honest.
Yeah. That's one thing that you'd say then, is you were tougher on yourself than other people were.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that you've worked on. How do you cope now in terms of how you feel about you?
I love myself. I've got
Perfect.
phew. I've got like a lot of anxiety. I still have to manage my emotions quite a lot. I'm in constant dialogue with myself because I overthink things and my brain goes like haywire dead easy.
Yeah.
And I don't always feel completely comfortable. I'm always a bit, I can be a bit self-conscious, but I'm constantly talking to myself and just reinforcing the positivity. I'm rationalizing the difficult emotions, and it's something that's taken a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it can be a bit of an exhausting process, but yeah, I'm dealing with it.
Would you say that's how you get through your lows? Is there a method that you use? I'm thinking for those young people who might be going through that. How do you get through those lows where you feel like you're at rock bottom?
It's not easy. I'd say, particularly as a teenager, to get through those real lows, like the first thing you've got to do, unfortunately, is buckle up, because you might be in for like a rocky night. But to really look after yourself, you have to take it one day, one moment at a time. If you're at that rock bottom moment, what I want people to realize that they can do, even if they feel like it's almost impossible, they can get through that night without turning to something negative, whether that's self-harm or alcohol or something else, talking to the wrong sorts of people. Just try it that one night. Try it for that one night, and the pressure that builds up in you might feel almost like it's like unbearable, but get yourself to the end of that night, get yourself to the next day. It might have been a really hard night, but you will make the next few days of your life so much easier, and you will start teaching yourself that it's possible to get through without doing those things to yourself. You don't need to.
Absolutely, and that's so powerful, about powering through. It's a story of resilience, really, your story, getting through the difficult times and sometimes that you still have now, with the current climate that we live in, and that's really powerful. What would you say is your top tip for those young people who maybe are considering maybe a change?
I'd say you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit before. It's about being yourself. It's ask yourself questions and, work on figuring yourself out, but trust yourself. There will always be people who say that they know better, when actually you've done the hard work, you've been through it, you know what makes you feel different or what makes you feel right. Trust yourself, take steps forward, and bring the people on the journey with you, even if they don't want to be there.
Absolutely, I love that. Don't look back. You just look ahead and
look ahead. Yeah,
absolutely. So many tips that you can get from that. Absolutely. Now, obviously, you're a public speaker. You do a lot of corporate work as well. Uh, Man of many, many, many talents. The primary school visits. So we went to a primary school. Talk to me about the first moment that you felt, maybe any nerves when we walked into that school. How did that go? How did that feel? And what did you do to kind of get past that?
I think, well, it was helpful having you there with
I'll
me
stop
because
that.
then you can bounce off each other a little bit. Then the nervous energy becomes like silly energy, and then you're just in the situation. Handling nerves for that situation and for any others, I think my like biggest life advice would be if you know you can do something, but you're kind of scared of doing it, just say that you'll do it, and then you've not really given yourself a choice. And there's no point in indulging in nervousness because then you put yourself in the position, you know you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So just get yourself to that point, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the school visits are interesting because young children are full of questions.
Yeah.
What is probably the toughest question that you've had from a child?
I think the hard questions are the ones that are a bit more personal because they're asking coming from a good place. So I remember that first primary school visit you mentioned before. What was really nice about it was that a bunch of these kids came up to me separately after my session, so they didn't ask in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And like 3 different kids asked me what my name was before I transitioned. Now I'm always an open book. I always tell people, ask me any questions. I can always tell you if I don't want to answer, and I'll tell you why. And that's basically what I said to the kids. Like I don't want to tell people what my old name is. I just don't feel particularly comfortable.
Yeah.
But what was really beautiful about that was that these kids were just so respectful. Like times have changed so much, even in the 10 years since I transitioned. I'd say, no, thank you, but like, thank you for asking me in that particular way. They'd be like, okay, great, thank you so much for the talk, and I learned this, and I'm like 7, 8, 9 years old. It was amazing.
It's lovely to see, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think you handle that so well because it is hard when you get a question that you don't feel comfortable with answering. And you have to have your boundaries, I don't know, your name when you were, but that's also your boundary, and that's okay as well. And it's always good to have. And I think it's a good bit of information for young people to remember that, you don't have to disclose everything, as long as you do it respectfully. And, it's always good to ask, but it's also good to have your boundary. And I love that. Now, flipping that, we went to a secondary school, sixth form. What was that experience like for you? Because they were around the age that you decided and you were transitioning. So how was that for you?
That was pretty wild. It was like the opposite of what my experience was because that was an all-boys school. And getting to talk again to these like dead respectful, engaged 18-year-olds who, I don't know, I looked over at the crowd and I was talking about my experiences and I was talking about stuff that in my year group like a lot of people wouldn't have understood, and they got it, and they were really polite and they were really accepting. It was a pretty amazing moment to sort of look back and sort of see it showed me how much time has changed, for the better. And obviously there's a lot of negativity out there. But I think within schools and within young people, there's a lot more knowledge and respect than there was even when I started transitioning.
Would you say that, obviously you said things have improved and things have changed, but would you say they're on the right step now? And also, what can we do to continue making a difference for those young people who might be thinking of that?
So education is a key thing, I think. And I think things are going in 2 different directions. So there's a lot of, I think a lot of young people are starting to understand themselves a little bit more. They're starting to be more accepting of the fact that the person they sit next to in class might not be exactly like them, and that's a good thing. That's absolutely fine. But there's also a lot of toxicity, and you'll have seen it in the press and coming from politicians and things like that. So I think all we can really do as sort of individuals is be kind to the people around us and keep educating each other and keep listening to what other people have to say. Like I could meet another trans person, trans man, trans woman, non-binary person, whatever, and I'd learn something very different because they've had a different experience to me. It's about empathy, I think, and I think it's about accepting that difference is a good thing. It's just trying to do that from the bottom up is not necessarily the easiest thing when you've got
No.
people shouting from the
Definitely,
from up there.
definitely, and you mentioned obviously, you know, that there's people in the world outside of where we live that have got a bad influence, and also being trans, you know, there is sometimes negativity from, you know, the LGBTQ community itself.
True.
So that can be very difficult. Now, would you say those experiences shaped how you handle difficult situations, and what would you say was probably the toughest thing that you faced outside of maybe the nervousness of telling your parents and family?
Oh, that was a big one, to be fair. In terms of how it shaped me, transitioning has made me a much more resilient person, but I think it's also made me a lot more understanding of other people. It's made me understanding of myself, and I trust myself more than I think a lot of people do. But it's made me understanding of the fact that people are going to be hostile sometimes if they don't understand stuff. I understand that people are going to be angry when actually that anger is driven by fear. You know, I think it just allows me a bit of perspective so that when I come to conversations with people who maybe don't quite get it, I can meet them on a certain level, and then we can have an actual productive chat, you know what I mean? And then we start seeing eye to eye then,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's so powerful because you're inspiring people by being yourself. And, you know, when people are acting towards you in a negative manner, you don't come back with negativity, you come back with education. And that is a skill in itself, you know, and it shows the values that you have. And really, those young people can really do that. So honestly, props to you.
Stop it.
Props to you. You know, you fully embrace who you are. You have. You know, you've taught me a lot. You taught our team a lot. You taught the wider company a lot. And recently, you hosted some DEI conversations and important conversations at a big name drinks provider who we won't name.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's
Check out my LinkedIn.
Yeah. Check the LinkedIn if you want to see. Yeah, check the LinkedIn. I'm sure there'll be videos on Instagram, etc.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine yourself going down this path and this is what you'd be doing?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's funny though, because you see transitioning or being different as this thing that's going to hold you back for your whole life, and it's what people who love you kind of worry about for you as well, that you're going to kind of ruin your life or take it off the rails by transitioning or coming out as gay or being different in some other way. When in actuality, when you learn to embrace who you are, you open up so many more opportunities because you find your people, you find the things that make you thrive, and you find your passions there.
Yeah. And you're not particularly a fan of networking, and you weren't particularly a fan of public speaking.
Yeah.
So what made you actually go, you know what, I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to do this.
Again, it's wanting to talk about these things, having the platform to do it, and then I think also a little bit of like GCSE drama comes out.
That helps.
Yeah,
100%. I understand.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's just something that I really care about, and to get the opportunity to do it, it's kind of a beautiful thing. You know, it's sort of seeing you do what you do, and then I come along and I do what I do, and you know, you don't know, like you could walk away from a class and, you know, some of the people weren't paying attention, but if you've got one person in that class who grows up either to be kinder to the people around them, to be more accepting, or to be kinder to themselves and accept themselves, completely worth it.
Absolutely, yeah. And that message of kindness keeps coming back, and I love that because you got to be kinder to yourself in order to be kinder to other people. Now, we've mentioned a couple of your highlights, but what would you say is being a highlight for you? Now, I'm going to ask you in two parts: in your life and then in your career.
In my career, I am going to say it's a toss-up between the school, you know, the kind of school talks I do, but the one that I did in the sixth form felt like quite a big moment, you know, for me. Highlight in my life, oh my God. I don't know, the highlights for me are the small wins.
Yeah.
They're the everyday things that I didn't think I'd get to appreciate when I was younger and just like felt doom and gloom all the time. I didn't think I'd get past a certain point. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to go to work, I'm excited to have this plan with a friend, you know, for an hour. I'm excited to listen to this album, you know, just feeling the joy of everyday life. I don't know, I didn't think I'd get to that point.
And it's important you say that, small wins literally make us, who we are. They make the
Yeah.
world go around. They make the mentality that we have. And like you said, waking up. So I want really young people to take from that is that every little thing you do is a small win. Whether you woke up today, you managed to put your socks on. Some people might not get to do that. Some people
No.
don't have the capabilities to do that.
No.
So it's really important to think about that. So I'm loving you talking about your highlights and seeing the joy that it brings to you. What's next for Aiden?
What's next? Keep doing what I'm doing, I suppose. Kind of try and get back into more schools, get into more corporates, and just kind of keep talking about my experiences. And like we've both seen from what we do the impact that talking from personal experience can have, not just on people who might be trans or might be facing racism from your perspective, but anyone who feels like they might be a little bit different in their own way.
Yeah.
The impact that it has when you see someone who's actually gone through an experience where they've felt that, I don't know. It just I think it helps people. So
Definitely. I want to touch on because like you said, in schools, some of the kids have crazy questions, right? Like but in your life, what's the funniest thing? And it might not have been funny at the time,
yeah.
but that somebody has said to you, and maybe a perception that they got completely wrong, and that you felt, oh, actually, and then you look back and you go, ha, actually, that was funny.
So people used to think that so you wear when many trans men will wear what's called like a chest binder, and then I'd also started on testosterone. People started to think that because I'd started on testosterone, like my chest had just dissolved. Like, I don't know where they thought what used to be there had gone, but like that was quite common.
Wow.
Yeah, but people don't know. This is the thing.
True, though, yeah.
And like you'd get some quite invasive questions.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, by the way, you probably shouldn't have asked this in this way.
Yeah.
Let me explain to you what on earth you think is going on here.
That's actually funny that it might dissolve, but we don't. And I guess it's again people don't know, and it's education.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
No, absolutely. But I love that you were able to handle that because I'll be honest with you, I don't know how I would have handled that question.
No, well, hopefully you won't get that.
yeah. All right, you never know.
You never know. You never know. Life is crazy.
It's not exclusive news, but you never know.
yeah.
Oh, what were your top support system network that when you were younger? Because I know you mentioned obviously your family, it was difficult, but who was your top support network when you were growing up and when you started to experience change?
So top support networks and systems are going to be the people around you. So your top support system can be your friends. It can be going out there and finding an in-person community of people who are like you. It can be going and trying a new hobby where there are people who are interested in the same stuff as you. It's people who can make you feel better in yourself. And it can be hard to find that. I know as a teenager, I personally felt a bit like trapped in my bedroom sometimes because you can't go anywhere. You've got homework, like all that stuff. But there are places you can go even if you can't get out. So if you want to find information or support for being trans, there's places like Mermaids if you're a trans young person. There's Stonewall, there's Indigo, there's Gendered Intelligence. And there's also, so I used to be part of this like trans mask chat room. I don't think it's going anymore. But there's a website.
Start a new one.
yeah. Aiden's chat room.
Yeah,
come along, everyone. There's a website called Trans Unite. And on Trans Unite, you can put in whether you're a trans man, non-binary, a parent of a trans person, anything like that, and your location, and it will come up with all of these in-person and online relevant chat rooms for you. So you can find community really easily in this day and age. Like you can find the people that you need to lift you up. So like go out there and find it because they can be the difference between a bad night and taking a step forward.
Absolutely love that, and we'll make sure that we're signposting on this podcast any of these sites that you want to be looking at and to find for support. But yeah, really interesting, and I really appreciate you giving that information. Now, I want to know, what advice would you give to teachers and parents who may come across young people who might be going through that change? What advice could you give to them to be supportive?
Put your own feelings of fear or anger or whatever aside and realize that even if you don't believe that this person is right in what they say, they're going through something at that moment and they need your help. They need your support. Whether you think they're just experimenting, and that might be true, and that's completely valid and completely fair. Give them the space to do that, and give them the support that they need to do that safely, and without feeling like they have to turn inwards, because that's when the damage starts being done.
Yeah.
It's
important to be respectful.
100%. Yeah,
you might not agree with whatever's going on, but it's important to be respectful.
It makes the world a difference. So I was lucky enough to have 2 English teachers in my school who were among the first people.
Can we give them a shout out?
Miss West and Mrs. Bowie.
Miss West and Mrs. Bowie,
Yeah.
big shout. If you're watching this, get in touch.
Thank you. Honestly, you never know that they might not know how much that means to me still to this day. But having that in my school, having adults who respected me enough to listen and to be like, okay, yeah, we're on your side and we're going to call you this name and we're going to go on this journey with you rather than against you.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's something that, again, can make a bad day so much better.
Yeah, and it's something you held on to because clearly, all these years after being in school, you still remember those teachers. So I want young people to take that, if you've got a teacher that really, that you're close to or that understands you, reach out to them and make sure that they're your ally. And that's what's important, isn't it? Being allies.
Being allies, having the people you need around you.
Absolutely. Well, Aiden, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. But before we go, this is the end of series 1. First of all, I want you to give a question for the first guest of season 2. Now, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but I want you to tell us a question that you're going to ask them.
Okay. Ooh, difficult one.
Yeah.
What do you think we can all do to make life kinder?
Love that. I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what is a quote that you live by to end the series on?
Oh, okay.
There's a few in there.
Yeah. But there's one that I use in my talks that I really like. It's I think it's Oscar Wilde, who love anyway. But be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Love that.
We're all different. We're all just doing our own thing.
Yeah.
So just stop trying to be that other person. Stop trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
Be yourself, and you'll be way happier in the long run.
I love that. And that is how you end a season, honestly. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Everyone, it's been amazing hosting season 1 of Real Talks with the amazing Aiden in our last episode. Whatever you do, just make life kind. Keep talking, keep sharing, keep posting, keep talking to us. Make sure you reach out if you do struggle. We are here and we're not going anywhere. So season 1 might be over, but we're still here for you. Let's keep it real. Take your time. See you later.